Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I hope you guys are on track with your LSG 800 course. This is going to be your third lecture of the semester, and you should have already taken Chapter 1 quiz, and you should already completed your course entry assignment. So this is starting the third week. We're going to begin with Chapter 2, describing and identifying plant parts. And what we're going to do here is we're going to look at some slides that I've taken from the author of the book, and I've actually incorporated some of the slides that I've collected over the years myself. And then at the end, I'm also going to put up some slides on flowers. I'm not going to talk through that. Some of it's going to be hit and miss with these slides, but it's just some PDF slides that have good pictures of the flower and the flower parts. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Again, this is Chapter 2. Please, I hope you've already read the chapter. It's a short chapter. It's going to be a short lecture. Read the chapter, listen to the lecture, and then go ahead and take the quiz immediately right after it so you don't forget that information. I also recommend that you have your book in front of you as you watch this lecture and follow along with me. All right, horticulture descriptions. We have woody plants. Basically, a woody plant, if you think of a tree or if you think of a shrub, anything that's got wood material in it, versus your herbaceous plant materials, which is going to be your annuals, your perennials, your vegetable plants. It's going to be anything that's real soft. The woody plants are going to snap if you break a twig. Your herbaceous plants are not. Evergreens, they're going to be plant material that's going to keep their leaves year-round, versus your deciduous trees are going to lose their leaves in the fall, and they turn the wonderful colors that we get to see here in North Carolina before they drop. But your deciduous plants are the ones that lose their leaves. Semi-evergreens are plant material that's going to lose some of their leaves, keep some of them. Even the ones that they do, they're kind of going to yellow or discolor a little bit, but they're going to remain on the plant material. Trees, guys, you know what a tree is. You're in Plant Materials 1 right now if you're taking this class. And then our shrubs. And I have a better description of these two in the slides here in the next few slides. Vines, more or less your crawlers. You're going to see these growing up the side of buildings. You're going to see them around mailboxes. You're going to see them growing along trellises and up over arbors. There's some real good examples when you guys go out to Tanglewood to see, especially the wisteria vine. Ground covers is going to be your ground ivy. Any type of ground cover it's going to cover real fast. Even junipers have been used as ground covers, but these are going to, take the place of lawn, and it's areas that you don't want to use mulch. You're going to plant a ground cover, and it's going to spread fairly quickly, not as fast as turf, but it's going to give you a cover that you're not going to have to worry about mulching, and it can also be used on some slopes to stabilize slopes. Annuals, they are the flowers that we plant for one growing season. Perennials are decorative flowers that we're going to plant that's going to come back year after year. Your biennials are going to be your plant material that's going to be here for 2 years and then they're gone. Hardy plants, I'd like for you to look at your definition in the book. Those that will survive winter temperatures of the local area, and then tender plants that will not survive temperatures below freezing. So that's the difference of that. So good definition in your book on page 30. Duration, again, an annual lives for 1 year or season. It reproduces and then it dies. You'll also study this in your horticultural pest management class when we're talking about the different types of weeds that can also be annuals or perennials or biennials. But your biennial lives for 2 years or seasons. It reproduces and then dies. And then your perennial lives for several to many years or seasons, and they may be woody with stems that persist above the ground over winter, or they may be herbaceous with the stems that die back to the ground each year. And with these herbaceous plant materials, you may want to kind of clean the beds up. You'll prune them back. You may even prune back these woody stems that persist and just kind of clean up before adding new mulch or pine straw. Evergreen, again, having leaves which persist for 2 or more seasons. Deciduous, having leaves which die and fall in the cold season. And this slide here is one that I collected. It was one I got from Clemson. So you're going to see it's about a mixture of 1/3 and 2/3 of the author's slides versus the ones that I have. But this was one that I had. An annual, guys, corn is a good example. Your Queen Anne's lace carrot is another example. So if you see this white flower growing in the wild, it's going to have a carrot at the bottom of it. But you know, corn is a good example of an annual. We plant it, plant it for food, harvest it, but it's going to die back. You know, it's not going to come back year after year. The biennial is, again, the 2 years. Going to be here for 2 years or 2 seasons. Evergreen, having leaves which persist 2 or more seasons, and deciduous, having leaves that die back, as we can see here with this maple tree. Growth form or habit. A herb. It's a herbaceous, no woody tissue, so no secondary growth. Remember, those are the ones that you can kind of just fold over. Think of like turf grass, you know, being herbaceous. It's real flimsy. Shrub, several stems from the base, and it's less than 25 feet tall. You may read in some other books that it may be a little bit smaller. It may only go to 15 feet, just depending on where you're getting your information. But a tree, it's woody, usually main one trunk or stem, and it's always more than 25 feet tall. Then your vines, they could be woody or herbaceous. They could be climbing with tendrils, hold fast, or have adventitious roots, or they can twine. And hopefully you guys are getting the same information probably in your plant science class now, or definitely pretty soon with it. All right, here we have the purple coneflower, you know, which is herbaceous. Here we have the flowering quince, which is a shrub. It's also deciduous, but it has those gorgeous reddish pink colors in the spring. And then here again we have the deciduous maple tree. The vines, you know, they can be herbaceous or woody, you know, and here is some good examples of it climbing up the tree. Here we have a good example of a woody vine, herbaceous, and then we have one growing along here on the fence line. You'll actually see this in a lot of agricultural settings. All right, again, horticulture descriptions. We have nursery plants. These are going to be plants like if you go out to a nursery, they're going to be set up either in a retail setting, they're going to be in like a display yard, and they're going to have them grouped. Most nurseries, they're not going to have, you know, if they're growing or they have 2,000 Yopon hollies on site, they're going to have, you know, maybe 50 in an area for retail customers to select from. They may send landscapers or landscape contractors on the back side of the nursery to pick from, you know, the greater mass. But your nursery plants are plants grown in the nursery for sale. You have greenhouse crops, you know, it could be anything from annuals to perennials to vegetable crops, but they're grown in a greenhouse. Bedding plants are going to be ones that we plant for seasonal. You know, we do a lot of seasonal color around here. You're going to plant your bedding plants in the spring. You may pull those up in the early fall and go back with some mums, and then definitely when the mums die back, you're going to pull those out and plant something such as pansies or violets. Native plants, they're native to the area that they're grown. You know, a native plant for us, Cornus floridia, our native tree. Exotics plants, they are ones that are introduced into a landscape. Naturalized plants are brought into an area as exotics, but they adapt well enough to escape cultivation and grow as successfully as native plants. Wildflowers, flowering plants that number over 20,000 species that are able to grow and propagate on their own. You're going to see a lot of this in the medians along highways, going up 52, going down 40, even around some of the major interchanges of these interstates. You'll see wildflower plantings. And one thing they plant this for is so they don't have to mow as often. Endangered species. Plants that are endangered of becoming extinct. Throughout a portion or through an entirety of their range. Threatened species are plants that are likely to become endangered in the near future. Rare species are plants that should be protected of their distinctive characteristics and limited number. Aquatic plants are rooted underwater. Specimen plants. These are, you'll learn more about this in design, but a specimen plant is one that's going to stand out in the landscape. My favorite for like a residential accent plant would be, like a Japanese maple or some type of flowering tree that's really going to catch your customer's eye, and onlookers or people that are driving by, they're going to see that specimen plant because it's going to stick out to them. Accent plant refers to plants from others in which they may be grouped. The difference is between them and the species. Specimen plant, apologize for that, they're accenting it. They're going to accent that specimen plant. Whereas you're going to see a specimen plant, it's probably going to be one on the corner, maybe another one on the corner, or just one itself. And then it's going to be accented with your accent plant. All right, description based on your temperature tolerance. Plants are classified either hardy or tender. Remember, we just discussed those definitions. It determines where the plants survive based on weather extremes. Extreme cold will kill your tender plants in winter, and it may even kill some of your, I've seen several Yaupon hollies be killed by extreme cold. And it's a woody plant. It's not your herbaceous type. Extreme heat might prevent fruit production or plant reproduction in summer. Also have seen heat destroy a lot of plants that are used to cooler temperatures. Hardiness zone maps. They are produced by the United States Department of Agriculture. The map shows an average temperatures throughout North America, and then each zone has an average minimum winter temperature variation of 10 degrees Fahrenheit. Maps identify microclimate areas with atypical growing conditions. The considerations for heat zone, the data is tracked by the American Horticultural Society, or AHS. They label the days with temperatures higher than 86 degrees Fahrenheit. These are your heat days. Plants suffer injury at temperatures higher than 86 degrees Fahrenheit. And so they have divided the United States into 12 heat zones. Zone 1 has no heat days, so it absolutely has no days that reach 86 degrees. Zone 12 averages 210 heat days. Plant identification purpose is to determine the comparative utility of plants. All right, before we get into this, let's go ahead and kind of review your vegetative terminology. I think I put this up in last week's lecture. But we have our stems, leaves, and roots. Our leaves being here, our stems, and then we have our roots that are going to be below ground. And guys, with the slides that I've put in here, I highly recommend printing these out because it's not only going to help you in LSG, but it's going to help you in your Plant Science, HOR 162, and your Plant Materials 1, HOR 160. The plant identification, types, recognition of a specific plant based on a lifetime of association and familiarity. You guys are going to get to this level, especially taking your plant materials classes. You're going to have your favorites that you're automatically just going to remember each time because they are one of your favorites. And then just over time, you're going to acquire just list of plant materials that you know. Recognition of a specific group, often sufficient for professionals. You may recognize something to be an azalea, but you may not recognize which one it is. Unless it is blooming. Same thing with your hollies. There's a ton of them. You're going to recognize it to be in the ilex species, but which holly is it? And then no immediate recognition requires use of process of elimination. Shortcuts to identification, always refer to your textbooks, photos, and descriptions, or you can ask questions of experts, academic, or government, especially your ag extension agents. And the one thing I do want to let you know about this is sometimes if you take one leaf to a so-called expert, it's going to be hard for them to identify. They need to actually see the plant, or at least a section, cut a little portion out so they can see multiple leaves on it and see part of the twigs. Take a picture, have a picture and a sample to show the expert. Dichotomous analytical keys, it's based on visible plant attributes. They're formulated as couplets, and then they're used to identify possible identifications until only accurate identification remains. All right, example. Does the flower have petals? It's either yes or no. But yes, are the petals in multiples of 5 or 6? They're in multiples of 5. Plants with flowers in multiples of 6 have been eliminated as possible identifications. So it is the process of eliminations, guys. Visual description of the plants. We have the identification via leaf. We have the margin, also known as the shape. The book has real good pictures of the leaf shapes. I would possibly photocopy these, have them in my notebooks. If especially when we finish and we're not using this book for a class or two, I would have these. Also, Michael Derbyshire, Plant Materials 1 book. Bridwell has some good descriptions of your leaf shapes. But we can also determine, by the presence or lack of lobes, veins in the leaves, whether it's simple or compound. And then if it's smooth or pubescent, then that means that it's covered with fine hairs. All right, leaf arrangement. Leaves per node. Here we have alternate. The leaves are arranged one per node, the node being here, and then they're alternating. So we got one here, skip over here, then we're going to skip over to the top right here. And hopefully you guys can actually see my mouse moving with the video recording of the screen. This isn't a PowerPoint. I'm actually having to use a PDF because I left the actual PowerPoint in my office at school. But here we have opposite. Leaves are arranged 2 per node, so they're directly across from each other. Alternate is like there's spaces in between them too. Here they're directly across from each other and they're 2 per node. Here we have whorled, ranged 3 or more per node. They have 1, 2, 3 here. There is the node. And then we have facile, leaves grouped in small, tight bundle. Leaf composition. Kind of hard for me to see. I'm going to have to lean up to the screen. We have a simple leaf, bipinnately right here, pinnately compound, and then palmately compound. Again, print this out. This is good to study by. Here we have an example of a tendril, a holdfast. You have your auxiliary bud. You have your leaflets. Simple compound, pinnately and palmately compound examples right here, guys. Once pinnately compound, This is one leaf. The whole thing right here is one leaf. Whereas twice pinnately compound, you have a primary leaflet right here, and then you have secondary leaflets, and it's on a rachis. And actually, think of this one right here, the once pinnately compound being one leaf. It's a little miniature guy right here on the twice pinnately compound leaves. But back to once pinnately compound, the leaflets arranged along one undivided main axis right here, and then the main axis with two or more branches, and the leaflets arranged along the branches, as you can see right here. Compound leaf types. Palmately compound are leaflets all arising from one point at the base of a leaf, as we can see right here. This is actually a leaflet. Each one of these is a leaflet, and this is palmately compound, all arising from one point at the base of the leaf. Identification via branch or twig, the type of buds. You're going to be able to determine, such things as Circensis canadensis or some of your maple trees. You're going to be able to determine what it is by just noticing the buds. Nature of the terminal bud, where it's located. Arrangement of the buds or leaves. The shape of a leaf's pedicle scars. Prominence of a lenticel or stipulal scars. And then the type of pith produced are all going to be visual descriptions of each plant that we are trying to identify. Identification by the flower may be described by position of the ovary in relation to flower parts. Hypogynous, the flower has a superior ovary, and these are some really good examples in the books, ladies and gentlemen. Perigynous flower has a superior ovary, but the petals and sepals form a tube-like structure around the ovary. As you can see on page 40 in your textbook, the real good examples. And then Epigonitis flower has an inferior ovary, and you look on page 40, the ovary is below the petals and the sepals. Identification via fruit. A simple fruit develops from a single ovary. Aggregate fruits develops from a single flower, and then multiple fruits are going to develop from a single stalk. Accessory fruits are going to develop from one or more ovaries, and these include the calyx and or the receptacle. Described by mature appearance of the pericarp, the ovary wall. You have the exocarp, the outer layer. Think of a peach. The outer layer, the skin, mesocarp's the middle layer, that's the actual yellow part, and the endocarp is the inner layer. The endocarp actually being that seed, the mesocarp of your peach being the yellow fleshy fruit, and then the endocarp being the skin. Same thing here with avocados, the cherries, almonds, good examples of this. Don't pay attention to the group. I know the book talks about fruits being put in categories of 4. I've heard of 3, but we're not going to get into that. You'll discuss that in plant science. So I just wanted to show you some examples of exocarp, mesocarp, and the endocarp. Okay. That is going to conclude this PowerPoint. I do want you guys to go ahead and take the quiz now, and if you have any questions, please email me or call me. Thanks, and I will see you in the next lecture.